The summer of 2019 was supposed to be a break from everything college, work, the grind. I'd rented a cabin in the Adirondacks, a secluded spot by Lake Wraith, a place so far off the grid it felt like the edge of the world. The lake was small, its water dark even under the midday sun, surrounded by dense pines that seemed to lean inward, as if guarding a secret. I'd heard the locals in the nearest town, a good 20 miles away, whisper about the lake, something about it being wrong, but I chalked it up to small-town superstition. I was here for peace, to clear my head. But from the first night, I knew something wasn't right. The cabin was old, its wooden walls creaking under the weight of decades. The air inside smelled of damp wood and something faintly metallic, like old coins. I unpacked my things, trying to ignore the way the silence pressed against my ears. Outside, the lake was still, reflecting the moon like a cracked mirror. I stood on the dock, staring at the water, and for a moment, I thought I saw something ripple beneath the surface, not a fish, but something larger, deliberate. I shook it off. Lakes play tricks at night. That first night, I couldn't sleep. The quiet was too loud, broken only by the occasional snap of a twig outside or the low hum of insects. Around midnight, I heard a sound, a low, wet gurgle, like someone choking on water. It came from the lake. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped onto the porch, the beam cutting through the darkness. The lake was calm, but the air felt heavier, like it was holding its breath. I swept the light across the water, and for a split second, I saw something pale break the surface, a shape, long and thin, before it sank back down. My heart thudded. Probably just a log, I told myself, but I locked the door that night. The next day, I tried to distract myself. I hiked through the woods, but the forest felt oppressive, the trees too close, their branches clawing at the sky. I found an old sign half buried in the dirt near the lake's edge. Its letters faded but legible, "Stay away from the water at midnight." No explanation, just those words. I laughed it off, but the unease lingered. That night, the gurgling returned, louder, closer. It wasn't coming from the lake anymore, it was right outside the cabin. I didn't dare look out the window. By the third night, the air in the cabin felt wrong, like it was thicker, harder to breathe. I kept the lights on, but they flickered every so often, casting shadows that seemed to move on their own. Around 11:30, I heard footsteps, heavy, wet, dragging steps circling the cabin. I clutched a kitchen knife, my palms sweaty, and listened as the steps stopped right outside the door. Something scratched at the wood, slow and deliberate, like nails dragging across a chalkboard. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I found marks on the door, deep, uneven scratches like something had tried to claw its way in. I told myself it was an animal, maybe a bear, but the marks were too precise, too human. I decided to leave, but when I got to my car, the tires were slashed, the rubber torn like it had been ripped apart by hand. I was stuck. My phone had no signal, and the nearest town was too far to walk. Panic set in, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something wanted me to stay. That evening, I boarded up the windows, using whatever I could find in the cabin. The air grew colder, even though it was July. The gurgling returned, now accompanied by a low, guttural hum, like a voice trying to form words but failing. I sat in the dark, clutching the knife, listening as the sound grew louder, closer. Then, a thud against the wall, hard enough to shake the cabin. I screamed, but no one could hear me out here. I don't know how I made it through that night. By morning, I was a wreck, jumping at every sound. I decided to investigate the lake, thinking maybe I could find answers. I walked to the shore, the air thick with the smell of decay. There, half submerged in the shallows, was a pile of bones, animal bones, I told myself, but some looked disturbingly human. A chill ran through me. I noticed something else. The water near the bones was moving, swirling, like something was circling just beneath the surface. I ran back to the cabin, my heart pounding. That night, The noises were unbearable scratching, gurgling, and now whispers, faint and unintelligible, like voices carried on the wind. I barricaded the door, but it didn't matter. Around midnight, the lights went out completely. In the darkness, I heard the door creak open, even though I'd locked it. Wet footsteps slapped against the floor, coming closer. I hid under the bed, holding my breath, praying it wouldn't find me. It didn't leave. For hours, I lay there, listening to it, move through the cabin, its breathing heavy and wet. It stopped by the bed, and I saw its long, pale limbs, slick with lake water, its fingers too long, its head featureless except for a gaping, toothless mouth. It didn't see me, but I felt its presence, like it was tasting the air for me. Eventually, it left, the footsteps fading back toward the lake. The next day, I knew I had to get out. I grabbed a backpack, some food, and the knife, planning to hike to town, no matter how long it took. But as I stepped outside, I saw it again, standing at the lake's edge, half submerged, watching me. Its body was wrong, too tall, too thin, its limbs bending in ways they shouldn't. It didn't move, but I felt its gaze, heavy and hungry. I ran into the woods, not looking back. The forest was no safer. The trees seemed to close in, their branches scraping my skin. I heard it following me, wet footsteps, snapping twigs, that guttural hum. I ran until my lungs burned, until I stumbled into a clearing. There, carved into a tree, was a symbolous circle with jagged lines like a crude eye. I'd seen it before, on the cabin's walls, scratched into the dock. It felt like a warning, or a claim. Night fell, and I was still lost. The hum was closer now, joined by a chorus of whispers all around me. I climbed a tree, hoping to hide, but the branches shook, like something was climbing after me. I saw it below, a writhing mass of pale limbs, its mouth opening wider, revealing rows of needle-like teeth that hadn't been there before. I threw my knife, hitting it square in the chest. It screamed, a sound that made my ears ring, and retreated into the shadows. I didn't sleep. At dawn, I kept moving, following a stream that led me to a road. A trucker picked me up, and I made it to town, shaking and incoherent. The locals didn't seem surprised when I told them about the lake. One old man just nodded and said, "You're lucky it let you go." He wouldn't say more. I never went back. I never will. Months later, I looked up Lake Wraith online. There wasn't much, just a few forum posts about missing hikers, strange lights, and a legend about something ancient living in the water, something that hunts at midnight. I still hear the gurgling sometimes in my dreams. I check my doors every night, and I stay away from water. I don't know what it was, but I know it's still out there, waiting. Asterisk, I can't shake the feeling that it saw me, that it knows me now. Sometimes when it's quiet, I hear wet footsteps outside my apartment. I don't look out the window anymore. It was the summer of 2012, and I had just turned 18. My parents thought it would be good for me to get away from the city lights of Chicago and spend some time on my grandparents' old farm in rural Iowa. The place was a relic from another era, acres of cornfields stretching out like an endless sea under the vast Midwestern sky. I arrived in the late afternoon, the sun dipping low, casting long shadows over the golden stalks. The air was thick with the scent of earth and pollen, and the only sounds were the distant hum of crickets and the occasional rustle of wind through the corn. Little did I know that rustle would soon become something far more sinister. Grandma welcomed me with her famous apple pie, but Grandpa was quieter than I remembered, his eyes darting toward the fields as if expecting something. That first night, I settled into the guest room upstairs, the one with the window overlooking the corn. The house creaked like old bones, and outside, the fields seemed to whisper in the breeze. I dismissed it as my urban imagination playing tricks. After all, city noise had always drowned out such subtleties. But as I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, I heard it. A faint, rhythmic swaying, like the corn was breathing. The next day, I helped with chores, feeding the chickens, mending a fence, but my mind kept wandering to the fields. Grandpa warned me not to wander in there after dark. "The corn gets ideas," he muttered, his voice gravelly from years of pipe smoke. I laughed it off, but that evening, as the sun set, I took a walk along the edge. The stalks towered over me, 8 feet high, their leaves sharp like knives. In the fading light, I thought I saw movement deeper in a shadow flitting between the rows. Probably a deer, I told myself, but my heart quickened anyway. Nights grew longer, and so did the unease. By the third evening, the whispers started. Not voices, exactly more like the wind shaping itself into sighs. I'd sit on the porch after dinner, watching the fields swallow the last light. Grandma would knit silently, but Grandpa stared out, unblinking. One night I asked him about it. "Old stories," he said. "Folks say the land remembers things. Bad harvests, lost children. Shadows that don't belong." I pressed for more, but he clammed up, retreating to his armchair with a bottle of whiskey. Sleep evaded me that fourth night. The house was stifling hot, no AC in those old walls. I opened the window, letting in the night air, thick with humidity. That's when the sounds sharpened rustles turning to scrapes, like something dragging through the dirt. I peered out, my eyes adjusting to the moonlight. The cornfield gleamed silver, almost beautiful, but then I saw it, a silhouette, elongated and unnatural, slipping between the stalks about 50 yards out. It paused, as if sensing my gaze, then vanished. I didn't tell my grandparents. They'd think I was cracking under the rural quiet. Instead, the next morning, I ventured into the field during daylight. The rows were a maze, disorienting even under the sun. Corn husks crunched underfoot, and the air grew still, oppressive. Deeper in, I found odd patches stalks bent unnaturally, forming crude circles on the ground. In one, the dirt was disturbed like claw marks. My phone had no signal, and for a moment, panic fluttered in my chest. I hurried back, but the feeling of being watched clung to me like sweat. That afternoon, storms rolled in. Typical Iowa thunderheads turning the sky bruised purple. Rain hammered the roof, but it didn't drown the unease. Grandpa finally opened up over coffee, his hands trembling. Back in '78, a neighbor boy went missing in those fields. Searched for days. Found his shoes, nothing else. Folks whispered about the harvester, some spirit born from bad soil, feeding on fear. I scoffed inwardly, but his eyes held no humor. As lightning flashed, I glimpsed something outside, shadows dancing in the downpour. By week 2, the nights blurred into paranoia. I'd hear footsteps soft, padding ones circling the house. One midnight, I grabbed a flashlight and crept downstairs. The kitchen clock ticked loudly, amplifying the silence. Peering through the back door window, I saw the cornfield alive with motion stalks parting as if something large slithered through. A low growl, almost inaudible, vibrated the glass. I backed away, heart pounding, convincing myself it was thunder. The whispers evolved into murmurs, fragments of words I couldn't quite catch. "Come ... closer ... They'd hiss on the wind. I started sleeping with the lights on, but even then, shadows played tricks on the walls. Grandma noticed my pallor and made herbal tea, but it tasted bitter, like the earth itself. Grandpa avoided my questions now, muttering prayers under his breath. I began to wonder if the farm held secrets. Maybe that missing boy wasn't the only one. Desperation drove me deeper. One overcast afternoon, I mapped the field with a crude sketch, following the bent stalks to a clearing. There, hidden amid the corn, was an old scarecrow tattered burlap, straw spilling out, but its button eyes seemed to follow me. Around its base, the ground was littered with small bones animal, I hoped. As I knelt to examine them, a chill wind rose, and the scarecrow's arms creaked, as if stirring. That night, the terror peaked. I awoke to scratching at the window nails on glass, deliberate. The room was pitch black. The power had gone out. Flashlight in hand, I approached, beam shaking. Outside, inches from the pane, a face, no, not a face. A grotesque mask of corn husks and shadows, eyes hollow voids. It tilted, whispering my name. I screamed, stumbling back, and the thing vanished into the field. Panic overtook reason. I bolted downstairs, grabbing Grandpa's shotgun from the closet. The house felt alive, creaks echoing like laughter. Outside, the cornfield beckoned under a blood moon. I charged in, flashlight cutting swaths through the stalks. Deeper, the murmurs grew to chants, guiding me to the scarecrow clearing. There, it stood, animated arms flailing, husks unraveling to reveal writhing shadows beneath. The ground split, bones rising like accusations. The harvester revealed itself not as spirit, but something worse. A mass of tangled roots and decayed flesh, pulsing with the field's malice. It lunged, tendrils whipping like vines. I fired the shotgun, blasts tearing through the night. The thing shrieked, a sound like 1,000 stalks snapping. I ran, corn slashing my skin, until I burst onto the road. Headlights, a passing truck saved me. They found me babbling, covered in dirt and blood. Grandpa confessed later, in the hospital. The farm was cursed from a long ago ritual, binding shadows to the soil. The boy in 78? Sacrificed to appease it. They thought it dormant, but my presence stirred it. I left Iowa, never returning. But sometimes, in city nights, I hear rustles in the wind, shadows in alleys. The corn remembers, and so do I. Years later, I still check windows at night. The terror wasn't just in the fields, it planted seeds in my mind. If you ever visit rural Iowa, stay out of the corn after dark. The shadows are waiting. It was the summer of 1997, and I was 13. Staying at my cousin's modern colonial home in a quiet Ohio suburb called Willow Creek. The house was only 20 years old, clean, comfortable, with air conditioning humming through the vents. Neighbors waved from manicured lawns, barbecues smoked on weekends, and kids rode bikes until dark. My Aunt Clara and Uncle Mark were friendly hosts, their 2 daughters my playmates. But on my first night, Aunt Clara pulled me aside in the kitchen. "Never go into the attic, Tommy," she whispered, her smile not reaching her eyes. "It's locked for a reason." I laughed it off. The house felt too normal for secrets. Days were idyllic. We swam in the backyard pool, the water cool against the sticky July heat. Neighbors hosted block parties. Laughter echoed from picket-fenced yards. But as sunset painted the sky bloody orange, a faint tapping started from above, rhythmic, like fingertips on glass. I mentioned it at dinner. Uncle Mark's fork paused. "Old pipes settling," he muttered, avoiding my gaze. Night 2, the tapping became murmurs, indistinct, like a crowd whispering behind a wall. I found the attic key in a kitchen junk drawer while grabbing a snack. Its brass tarnished and oddly heavy. When I asked Aunt Clara about it, she yanked it away. Some things from the old owners we kept locked away. That night, the whispers shaped my name. Tommy. Listen. The neighborhood slumbered peacefully, porch lights flickering like watchful eyes. I'd press my ear to the ceiling, sweat beading in the humid air despite the AC. The voices mimicked my little sister's laugh, dead, 3 years from leukemia. Come play. Like before. I banged on my cousin's door at 2 a.m. They pretended to sleep. Day 4, exploring the garage, I pried open that forbidden box. Inside, faded Polaroids of smiling 1970s kids, Then grainy shots of the same faces twisted in attic shadows. A newspaper clipping. Cul-de-sac mystery. 5 children vanish from Willow Creek. 1972. The whispers that night cooed lullabies from my childhood. I pocketed the key, heart racing. Neighbors mowed lawns, oblivious. But dusk brought footsteps heavy, childlike, pacing the attic boards directly above the garage. Thud ... shuffle ... thud. Uncle Mark caught me staring upward. "The house has memories," he said hoarsely, then walked away. Checking the communal mailbox, I found an unmarked envelope shoved into our slot. A child's drawing of stick figures hanging from rafters, captioned, "Join the attic party." No address. That night, whispers giggled. ... we're waiting. Bring friends ... Rifling through photo albums, I saw construction photos. Workers sealing the attic during the 1977 remodel. Faces pale, one mouthing, "They're still up there." The voices turned pleading. ... so lonely ... unlock us ... Something scratched under my bedroom door. Heat lightning flashed outside, illuminating neighbor silhouettes frozen in windows. The scratching became pounding. ... let you down. My cousins whispered in their room next door. "Don't listen, Tommy. It wants you." Morning scratches trailed from my door to the attic stairs, gouged fresh through new carpet. Aunt Clara barricaded the access panel. The developers found ... things. When they dug the foundation, whispers sobbed my dead sister's name. Night 6, I forced the panel open. Icy wind blasted the summer heat away, carrying children's laughter from the dark. Neighbor floodlights flickered simultaneously outside. Up there, games from the missing kids. Ouija planchette spelling to omen y pull y. Toys shifted when I wasn't looking. Walls pulsed with handprints pushing outward. "We played hide and seek," they whispered. Developer locked us in. Forever summer. I turned to escape, door vanished. Small hands pulled me down. Outside, neighbor cars started their engines without drivers. They absorbed me into endless games. Next morning, my cousins nailed the attic shut again. Willow Creek waits for the next summer visitor. Hear the whispers yet ...